And good evening and welcome to the 2D podcast. Back with you as always, kind of. Most of the usual crew is here. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHP. We have with us the great Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, the VP of R&D at PFF.com. And joining us in place of one, Jeff Chadiha, who is on assignment covering the NFL awards. We bring in our good friend from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, ESPN Las Vegas. Adam Hill is with us. Adam, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I tried to set it up so that I'm right in front of 810 here, but I don't think you can see them behind me anyway. I gotta lift it up for you.
I did that for there you go. I did that on a show. Every show that I've gone live from Radio Row, I've had the Radio Row behind me just to make the person feel special, Soren. So, Soren, if you don't feel special, you should.
I do. I always feel special when I'm around you, Eric. Let's be honest. That's just the effect you have on people, right? The kind, giving guy that leaves his mark everywhere he goes. We know that, right? Your wife said it. I'll say it. It's a reality. If you've ever had Eric as a house guest, you will know Eric was there when he comes to your house. You will know he is in the house. All right, we got a lot to get to tonight in a short amount of time because there's a lot of things going on in LA. Adam Hill, Eric Eager in LA. We want to get into a number of things. We'll start with Rams and Bengals becoming the Super Bowl, Burrow versus Stafford. What are the teams going to be copying from these two? It's a copycat league, and what are the takeaways from this? Sean McVay versus Zach Taylor. The head coaching hirings, 3 more have come down since last we talked. Mike McDaniel, Lovie Smith, Dennis Allen, Roger Goodell spoke to the media. The NFL's going to Germany. Broncos sale, Bills Stadium. I don't know that we'll get to it all. I don't know that we have time. But let's start with you, Eric. Rams -4 versus the Bengals, both ways. What you tell me? What is the, what are the keys to this game, both ways for either the Rams or the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's going to talk about the offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals against the defensive line of the Los Angeles Rams. And I think when you look at both of these teams, they sort of have the exact same style of play. You know, they run the ball on early downs, and in many cases taking the ball out of their best players' hands. And then they're an explosive passing game, right? So, when you look at the efficiency of both of them are very efficient passing offenses. Both of them are not efficient at all running the football. So to me, I think the biggest question in this game is, are the Bengals going to do what they did against Kansas City, which is run the ball on early downs and trust Joe Burrow to convert second and third and longs? Or are they going to exchange Joe Mixon runs for maybe Joe Mixon passes and Jamar Chase passes and T. Higgins passes on early downs and avoid some of the late down stuff that they avoided against the Chiefs, right? Chris Jones got the 6 pressures, had Burrow in his grasp a couple of times. He got away. I don't think that's going to happen against the Rams. So the question becomes, can the Bengals keep themselves out of long yardage situations and move the football consistently? Because if they can, I think they can win the game. If they don't, I think the Rams are going to blow them out.
All right, Adam, what are your thoughts? What do you think the key both ways are for both the Bengals and the Rams? Either way, what do the Bengals have to do? What do the Rams have to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really intrigued by the Bengals receivers, and I think they're obviously a very good group. Jamar Chase took them from very good to elite in terms of wide receivers, and I want to see what the Rams do in terms of Jalen Ramsey. I know he said he wants Jamar Chase. I would expect, that he doesn't cover Jamar Chase, that they put maybe him on T. Higgins and go with a safety help on Jamar Chase, maybe get a double team in on there. But I really want to see how the Rams are able to defend the wide receivers and how much separation they're actually able to get, how open they're able to get if Burrow has time to try to find them. And that's a matchup I'm looking for. And on the other side, I want to see if the Rams are aggressive throughout the game, because looking back, and I watched the game again to watch Sean McVay last time, and I know he talked a lot about overthinking everything in that first Super Bowl, and he was up all night trying to come up with new plays and trying to self-scout and figure out how's Belichick going to go after me and what am I going to do there? I know that he thinks he knows what he did wrong, but I hope that he learned those lessons and that he's not overly, overcompensating maybe for what he did last time. And I think McVay is a big key here. I love Sean McVay. I've always loved him. I've always thought he was a great coach. But if he gets too conservative again, that's something I'm looking for in this game. And I'm a bit concerned about it because the way that I always bet in these spots in Super Bowls, I always take the favorite on the money line. It's every single year. It's how I bet. It's how I've done it for a long time. And I think, you guys are a higher level thinking show that can kind of understand this. It's the one time a year that there's actually value on a favorite on the money line, because everybody that comes to Vegas either lays the points or takes the underdog on the money line. Nobody takes the favorite on the money line. It just doesn't happen. All these recreational bettors are looking at it and like, oh, wait, nobody takes the dog with the points. They just don't do it for the most part.
The last time the dog covered, I want to say was that Arizona against Pittsburgh. The dog covered but didn't win, right?
Right. And what people do, and I've being in Vegas, I talk to a lot of sportsbook people. People will come up that never bet all year, and they'll be like, "Give me, I want to bet Cincinnati." And they're like, "Well, okay, here's your $100 to win 91 or whatever it is." And they're like, "Well, that's it." Well, how do I win more? Like, well, you bet the money line, and then you can win. About $100 gets you almost 300. Like, yeah, I'll do that one. I want to do that. And so they're either betting the favorite and laying the points, or they're taking the dog on the money line. So you actually get real value on the favorite on the money line. So I like the Rams anyway, but that's how I always choose to attack Super Bowls.
So at -4, what are you getting the Rams at on the money line?
Actually, I'm not. I haven't been able to check my apps here. I haven't done it yet. I saw 190 before I left, which usually it would be 230, 225. I mean, you'd get a little bit higher on the. Oh, that's not fair. You get a little bit higher on the money line usually during the regular season.
Adam gets spooked by the comments too.
I do.
I love to, for people who are listening to us on the podcast, we stream live every Thursday at 9:00 Central Time, and we have the chat room going. So if you're watching us on Twitter, I don't think you can get on the chat room. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, there you can comment in the chat room, and I can post the comments. And every time I put it up for Eager, it stops in mid-sentence.
Sure.
Right, he cannot focus on what he's doing, and it's nice to know that you're as easily rattled.
No, well,
it's like when Stafford, drops, looks, throws, and there's a robber in the middle of the field. It just sort of stops him in his tracks.
Well, I also we have used this, sir, and as you know, throughout the pandemic, we use StreamYard, so I'm okay with it usually. I'm just more reacting to don't take shots at Cofield. He's not even here to defend himself. That's not nice.
No. We'll piss in Cofield's ear all night if we feel like. Don't worry about that. That will happen. Of course. Listen, I think one of the keys, one of the most important matchups for me is going to be. I don't know. I came up with this theory about the third receiver being key in big games, and it's caught fire. Like a lot of people are running with it, But Eric, you remember when I hatched that idea about the third receiver being a big one in championship games, right?
Yeah, they call in math the person that first proves the theorem doesn't always get it named after him. So it's called the Petro theory.
Yeah. It's actually Eric's theory, but I've been watching it ever since he put it out there, and it really is. And this is one that I think is interesting because the Bengals, Eric's had that theory, and most people poo-pooed away the Bengals, but here they sit. And they might have with Tyler Boyd the best third receiver in the game, right? He's better than Byron Pringle they got by the Chiefs, or McCole Hardman, pick whoever you want to be. He's better than who's the Raiders' third receiving option, Adam.
Who's the Raiders' second receiver?
Yeah, I was going to say it's you, Brian Edwards.
Right? I mean,
Titans don't have a third receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I point to it. I mean, Eric hatched that, and I've watched it ever since, and it's a giant part of what gets people through. Everybody is focusing on the O-line of the Bengals versus the D-line of the Rams, and and everybody goes, okay, Rams win that. It's not going to be like the Chiefs with only one sack. What's the over under? 3.5 on sacks in this game? I think for the Rams,
it's 5.5, but 3.5 for the Rams.
3. Okay, so 3.5 for the Rams. The Titans had 9. The Chiefs had 1. I mean, I'm looking for other matchups because I don't think it can just be that simple as Bengals O-line versus Rams D-line. Can it, Eric?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's exactly what you said. The Chiefs did a really good job of limiting Jamar Chase in the AFC Championship game. I know he had the touchdown against, I think it was Fenton in the end zone, but what was he at 54 yards? And they actually did a pretty good job with Boyd. That's 19 yards. But the problem is you're playing whack-a-mole as a defense, right? So T. Higgins comes in, and he gets his 6 for 100 and good yards after the catch and all that kind of stuff. And, and you're also impervious to injuries. C.J. Uzomah is a pretty good tight end, went out of the game early. And when, if you were Kansas City, let's say, and Pringle or, God forbid, Hill or Kelsey got hurt, you're screwed, right? With the Bengals, you got 4 good options. One of them gets hurt, still have 3 good options. But in this game, it also puts the Rams in a tough spot, because if you take Ramsey and single him up on Chase and trust everybody else to cover Higgins and Boyd and possibly Uzama if he were to play, Chase is probably going to win, 40%, 50% of the matchups against Ramsey, as good as Ramsey is, right? So you don't even get that part locked down. And then you also have Higgins and Boyd and Uzama against guys who aren't quite as good, right? If you do what I would do and you take Ramsey and have him go on Higgins, because of body types, Higgins might not win a lot of those. But then you're rolling the dice on Chase against, maybe double coverage or something like that, and then it's Boyd. Like, it puts a bind in a lot of things. And then the other good thing, and you saw this with Higgins specifically 2 weeks ago in the championship game, they all do good run after the catch. All of them are good after the catch, including the tight end Uzama. And what I think has to happen in this game is Burrow has got to take the snap, 1, 2, 3, boom, and get some yardage after the catch, throwing the ball quickly, and they can do that. And that's really where I see, again, Zach Taylor's been pretty conservative in a lot of games. The first Chiefs game, he actually wasn't. I thought that was a better game plan, frankly, than the one he just put out there against Kansas City. If he goes to that game plan and the Rams stick with theirs, which is to run Cam Akers early and to pray that Stafford can make plays on late downs to guys like Kupp, I think the Bengals could win this game.
Yeah. Do you who do you have? I know you're betting the favorite on the money line, Adam, but who do you think wins this game in your mind?
Actually, I do think the Rams do. Cincinnati has gotten by, and they've been impressive, no doubt. I mean, I was there in Cincinnati, and I know Eric was there as well. Like, that was not the most impressive performance against a Raiders team that didn't play all that well. Last week, obviously, 2 weeks ago, not to bring up a sore subject, Kansas City should have won that game. When they didn't step on the gas pedal. They let them back in, obviously, at the end of the first half, and just completely shutting down offensively. Like, Cincinnati is getting by, and I don't want to take anything away from them, but I've not been overly impressed necessarily. Tennessee game that was Tennessee not playing well to me. I haven't been blown away by Cincinnati. Now, they're winning, they're here, and I think you have to give them credit for it. But I just think body of work in general, and even lately, I think the Rams have been a better team. So I'm on the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win the game. I don't think it's easy. I wouldn't want to lay the points necessarily. I think it could easily be a close game, but I just have not been blown away by this Cincinnati team, and I'm not going to jump on it now.
I haven't either, and I've described it as midnight's going to strike on Cinderella, and I think this could be an old school beatdown, the way the Super Bowls used to be on a regular basis, because I think the pass rush of the Rams should get home. If it doesn't, I give a lot of credit to Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, or if it gets home and Joe Burrow stands in against it and is, taking 7-yard loss on a sack and then slinging one for 20. I mean, tip your cap. Congratulations. The kid's marvelous, but I just don't think that can happen. And I'm intrigued by what the takeaway is going to be from these two teams, right? Like what is in your mind, Eric, the lesson that people are going to be bringing back? Right now it's, 3 wideouts, right? We remember the triplets with the Cowboys. Was that you have a quarterback, running back, wideout. That was one of the takeaways from them. Should have been great defense, manipulate the draft. But the easy one was the triplets. The Bengals, the theme seems to be you got to have 3 top shelf wideouts, right? We're going to see wideouts rocket up the board, even though this year is not last year's wideout class, at least at the very top. We're going to see somebody come rocketing up the board because Jamar Chase had success, is my assumption. My fear is that it becomes a league that goes fantasy football-esque, right? The Rams are all in, and people are going to say, hey, we got to be all in, and that means throw everything at it, and we're going to see a league of 16-1s and 1-16s all over the place.
Yeah.
And the middle's going to be gone. What do you think the takeaway will be from the Super Bowl? Maybe dependent upon who wins it, but what is going to be the theme from both of these teams?
Yeah. If the Bengals win, it's sort of it's actually a competition between 2 different styles of building a team, right? Like the Bengals 2 years ago were 2-14. They kind of let the bottom fall out. They draft a quarterback first overall. They have $58 million in cap space going into next year. And they're not a perfect roster, but the quarterback covers a multitude of sins. And you talk about the wide receivers and everything. Check this out. In their secondary, Trey Waynes, Eli Apple, Chidobe Awuzie, Ricardo Allen, Trey Flowers, Vernon Hargreaves, Von Bell, Mike Hilton are all players who have started a full season as an NFL player on another team in the secondary. So we see this a little bit in Kansas City where the Chiefs throw numbers at the problem. And the Chiefs do it a little differently because they're not proven players. These guys are like proven mediocre players, right? But the Bengals kind of understand that in the secondary, and their highest cap hit next year is Trey Waynes. He doesn't even start anymore. He was beaten out by Awuzie, Apple, and Hilton, but they threw numbers at the secondary, and they're not great there, but they're not bad, right? They're not getting just roasted every single game. They're very resilient. And in a league where there weren't great teams this year, we talked about that on the Central Bank pregame show, there weren't great teams. And it was who's going to be more resilient. And the Bengals are more resilient by design, right? The Rams are more resilient either by luck or by something we're not seeing, right? Because they did the stars and scrubs approach. The Rams have 3 of the top 5 most valuable non-quarterbacks in the NFL, Ramsey, Kupp, and Donald. And so they kind of, to me, I think the difference between them is when they took the big shots, when they put the Frank Clark money and picks towards a player, that player became a star, right? And so they did that, but also they're very good, and it's been year after year now. So I think there's some secret sauce there at staying healthy, and that's what you have to be resilient in a different way if you're going to do the stars and scrubs stuff. Your stars have to stay healthy, and for however that's happened. So to me, the name of the game is resiliency, and the question is how to buy it.
I think two things about the Rams. I think that's a great point. Hang on, Adam. One thing.
Yeah.
Your point about them staying healthy, I know that's starting to get unlocked, right? People are starting to – the soft tissue injury thing, they've got a route. They've researched on what they think the best way to practice is to keep guys healthy, and they've been healthier than most teams, right? There's still injuries. It's a physical, violent game, but that's one of the big things. I think the other thing that people don't realize in their stars and Jags approach, I think you make a great point that they've hit with all their stars. Right, even with Matt Stafford, right? He played at a high level. I know he had some turnovers coming down the stretch, but he's played at a high level. But I think the other aspect of it is they've actually had more draft picks than people realize. Like I've been digging them. They haven't had high draft picks, but they've had, I think, the 5th most draft picks in the last like 3 years or 5 years because they're firing a lot of guys down at the bottom. And they're finding the good mortar pieces to go in around the stars, the bricks of the operation to make it all glue together. And I think they deserve some credit for that. Adam, what were you going to say?
That was essentially going to be my point, that they've also traded down a lot. When they do have picks, it's like, oh, we have a second. All right, let's make that a third to fourth or whatever whatever formula they're doing. And they're getting a lot of picks and stockpiling them, but they're also hitting them. And I think one of the things you're talking about, if you're talking about that narrative coming out of this game and whoever wins and everybody trying to replicate it, like it could be dangerous both ways, because to me, the Rams approach is more than just, hey, let's go attack and get these superstar players. It's doing a really good job, not only acquiring picks, but they've done an unreal job scouting those guys in those later rounds. They've hit on a lot of them, and I think at a higher rate than other teams do. So it's kind of dangerous to be like, hey, we're going to be able to do this, but you got to hit, and you got to have a good scouting department to do it. On the other side, I think the takeaway would be, hey, build around your quarterback early, because when you have a rookie deal quarterback, like you're going to be able to make a run and make a move if you get the right pieces in place around him. But that's also dangerous too if you're building too early around a guy that's not quite ready to take that step. I think teams need to be a little bit cautious about, hey, we can replicate what they did, because both these teams did a good job getting here.
That's a good point. I do think that they took a page out of the Chiefs book of let's get all the talent, then let's drop the quarterback in the middle of it. And I think the Bengals did a good job of that. To your point about the scouting, though, about, hey, they deserve credit for their scouting. Eric, do they deserve credit for their scouting, or do they deserve credit for realizing there's really no difference between a 4th rounder and an undrafted player? And that if we get a bunch of them, 4th rounders that play are going to get minutes, right? You give an NBA guy minutes, if he's good enough to get to the league and you give him 28 minutes, he's going to score 15 points, right? Just there's a minimum skill level. Is that what they've unlocked, that there's really only 2 rounds of difference makers and everybody else is the same and you got to play him? And while everyone else is running around, it's important what you get is cost certainty at the bottom level. And all those guys are pretty much the same. Get a good coaching staff that can coach them up and you're going to be effective, because the Rams are very controversial on how they scout. They don't send guys down to the Senior Bowl. They've cut back. I mean, that's a big sticking point. Did they get it right, or do they just understand they're all the same?
I think you and I, being Chiefs fans and following the team, I think we've been conditioned to think of the draft picks as finished products, right? Because guys like Hardman haven't developed. Guys like, the guys that were good for the Chiefs this year were good right away, right? And like, I think it's partially the whole, like the draft is flat thing, but I also think it's partially they might develop those guys. Like Greg Gaines is like, he wasn't a guy until this year, right? He developed into a player to be an interior player for them. Troy Hill was like that. And he left, but there are a number of players who came out not very good and got better. And like with us in Kansas City, we just see guys, if he comes in and he's not very good at the beginning, it's kind of is Juan Thornhill developed at all as a Chief? He's the same exact guy who started week 1 of 2019, right? So I think it's partially that, but it might just be that they coach better, or they develop players better, or they find players who maybe fit their scheme better, or they find players who have some sort of analytics about how they develop. But I think it's that more than it is they're picking the right players better than everybody else. It might just be they do things that some of our favorite teams don't do, and we're not used to seeing quite as much.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a fair point. While we've been talking, or right before we got started talking, they announced the NFL Hall of Fame. Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler, Sam Mills, Richard Seymour, Bryant Young, Cliff Branch, Art McNally, and Dick Vermeil makes the Hall of Fame. Adam, what jumps out at you most from that group? Is there one that you say, oh, finally? Is there one you say, I can't believe it? What's your reaction to it?
Well, obviously, in my neck of the woods, Cliff Branch really stands out, and obviously, unfortunate that he's not here to be a part of it. But I know there are a few guys around the Raiders organization, and that's an organization that obviously talks about their history and their alumni more than most do. There are a few guys as beloved as Cliff Branch, and especially with Mark Davis, who has a very, very, very soft place in his heart for Cliff. So I think it's really cool. For them and for the organization and for the family, and everybody's excited about it. But also, I'm very disappointed in myself, because I was actually talking to Tony Baselli for 10 minutes today, and I could have been like, hey, congratulations in advance, and I didn't. I blew that.
Yeah, nice job. Cliff Branch, by the way, one of Curtis Siebold's main points of emphasis that he has thought deserved to be in the Hall of Fame for a while.
Houston Texans legend Tony Baselli.
Yeah, legendary Texan. The only guy to go twice, the number 1 overall for 2 expansion teams, right? Because he was number 1 for the Jags with their pick, and then number 1 for the Texans in the expansion draft. Any of these jump out at you in particular, Eric?
Leroy Butler. I think there's not a more iconic. Well, there of course is. Green Bay's a weird franchise where everything's iconic. But the Lambeau Leap is one of the most iconic things in all of sports. They carved out an exemption for it in the celebration, all that. And obviously Butler was the one that put it together. That one was big. Sam Mills was another one where you think about the Soul Patrol, defense with the linebackers with him, Pat Swilling, Ricky Jackson, Vaughn Johnson, that. Those were teams that were just an absolute house back in the day. Bryant Young was one. Bryant Young, people don't give that a lot of credit, but that was the last Niners Super Bowl. Bryant Young was a rookie, came on the scene, played a fantastic football, the leading sack person in the history of that storied franchise. So, a lot of people say, oh, what about Hester? What about DeMarcus Ware? And those guys will get in. I was pretty kind of thrilled for some of these guys who have waited their turn and are all deserving in my estimation.
Eric, you talked about iconic celebrations. Did you try the Icky Woods pork rinds that were going around Radio Row today?
I'd like to help out a struggling member of our community, but I didn't get around to it.
I've never had a pork rind in my life, and I wasn't about to start, but I felt bad. I wanted to try one.
There's some quality rinds out there. I will tell you that. As a guy who's been on and off the low carb diet for the better part of the last 20 years, pork rinds are an essential part of any kind of low carb diet. You've got to have a crunch sometime in your life, and that's the only thing you can eat when you get to a low carb diet. I'll throw some love Dick Vermeil's way because I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but taking 2 franchises to the Super Bowl, finally winning one, but also bringing back aggressive offense, right? Like when he unleashed the Rams, the greatest show on turf, and I've heard him talk about it. He said, I used to play that don't turn the ball over, don't make a mistake style of football. He said, and we'd be executing everything I wanted. And I'd look up, there'd be 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. We'd be leading 19-16, and I'm asking my defense to get a stop or I'm going to lose the game. And I think just kind of the epiphany that he had with that and saying, Kurt, it's okay if you throw some picks, just go make some plays. I think, we're going to look back. I mean, that really was the team. I know the 49ers were putting up good numbers and were an effective offense, but like the balls to the wall, all out, let's go, send the ball over the field, and I'm not afraid to throw it on every down. He made sure that Mike Martz ran it a little bit, but Dick Vermeil really fueled that. And I think that's an underrated part of the game. So I'll throw some love towards Dick Vermeil for that. And also Mike Vrabel picking up the Coach of the Year award. Does anybody have a problem with Mike Vrabel getting the Coach of the Year award?
Yeah, I had a 40-1 bet on Zach Taylor. That's my problem with it.
Did you actually think he was going to win?
No, I mean, like, this is how shot in the darky it was. I had Zach Taylor, Matt Nagy, and I think my last one was an absolute privilege, Joe Judge. So I had all those guys at like 40-1, and I figured one of them was going to fall ass backwards into the playoffs, and I was right. But Vrabel deserves. I mean, that team stinks, and they somehow got to the 1 seed.
Joe Judge got robbed. I feel like, listen, I don't want to sound like a Raiders homer because I'm not a Raiders fan. Rich Bisaccia did an unbelievable job. It was incredible what he did. I don't know how he held it together the way that he did through everything. I mean, we on the beat didn't hold it together. It was a brutal year, and for him to come through and take them to the playoffs, like not that I'm arguing that he necessarily deserved it over Vrabel, but some consideration I think for what he did has to be there.
And Sean McVay gets none. Okay,
it's the expectations.
And that's why I hate the award.
Yeah,
I think the award sucks. The award is for who outperformed the media's dumbass expectation. Like that's what it is. It's the media dumbass who made the media look like the biggest dumbass. That's what the award is given to. And in reality, it's like, well, McVay has all this talent. Yeah, nobody was saying the Rams were a lock to win it. They knew they'd made some moves. The more of the conversation was, like they think they're smarter than everybody in the room. And they, to this point, have proven to be smarter. Right, Eric? I know that pains you to say that, but right now they've proven to be smarter.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't argue with results. I mean, the Rams deserve, I think, a great deal of – they put a lot of pressure on themselves this year, and they've, for the most – I mean, for all intents and purposes, have met every expectation they've set out for themselves. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, put McVay in there.
Yeah, and let me say something else. Sean McVay is the youngest coach in the league still, right, with a 36-year-old being hired who's just a couple of months younger than him. Sean McVay is still the youngest coach in the league, and he's going to coach in his second Super Bowl against a member of his own coaching tree. That, I think that's underreported. I don't think that's getting enough love. Not to mention that Staley's with the Chargers. He's got one or two other guys, doesn't he, that are out there, or a couple of them been fired. I can't remember. But coaching at 36 years old, you're coaching against a guy from your coaching tree in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, that would be like Andy Reid coaching against Doug Peterson or something like that.
When he was 36.
Yeah.
He's 60.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I was somebody who was wrong about the Rams. I have, this is something that does not get lost on me. I mean, he is, and I also think, and maybe this is Snead for executive either or whatever, but they identified a season where there wasn't really an elite team in the league, or there wasn't a top like a 4 seed was no different than being a 2 seed, right? And they identified that, and they went all in even after the season started. And so they deserve a lot of credit from top to bottom. I mean, Matthew Stafford deserves some credit. I don't know. He won't obviously get in the MVP votes, but like he deserves credit. I mean, everybody on that team deserves credit. Aaron Donald should have gotten more than 3 Defensive Player of the Year votes. I mean, like it's absurd. Yeah, they've defied a lot of expectations.
We got to get to the bottom of this one. I love it. Aaron loves to try to throw Eric off his game. Do you bring your own high-end drinkware, or are you going with the plastic cup there in the hotel, Eric? What do you rock?
I'm sober as a judge, guys. Sober as a judge. I don't have. I use the stuff that's in the hotel, man. I'm not like Chadiha. I don't bring my own. I don't get fancy with it. I had great lunch with Chadiha, by the way. Everybody who's wondering if Jeff would pay up on his bet, Jeff did. He was a gracious lunch mate yesterday. It was a lot of fun to chat with Jeff.
Yeah, and Adam, you don't. I think we may have talked about this when we had you on earlier in the year, but at 3 and 4, Chadiha and Eager made a bet. Eager said Chiefs make the playoffs. Chadiha said no, and Jeff was ready to pay up, but 5 weeks later?
It was it was pretty quick.
It was quick.
So, some of us made Chiefs AFC and Super Bowl bets at that time and are not happy right now.
Yeah. Well, you made AFC West championship bets on them too, though, and you cashed those, right?
Listen. I was going for a lot. It didn't work out.
Adam wanted a vacation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It didn't work out.
How much would you have to bet at 16-1? That was the low water mark for the Chiefs, wasn't it? At 3 and 4, they were 16-1.
By the way, at halftime last week, I was looking at flights to Cancun. Did not book those flights. Thank goodness.
I love it. 3 head coaches have been hired since we last spoke. Mike McDaniel to the Dolphins, Lovie Smith to the Texans, Dennis Allen to the Saints.
Could you show some more enthusiasm on those last 2?
Listen, I mean, I like Lovie Smith. I think he's a good football coach. I don't think he's a great coach, but I respect any man that can carry Rex Grossman's ass to a Super Bowl. I mean, I'm impressed, and I will give props to the guy that does that. And so I do respect Lovie Smith a lot, and I feel bad for the man, and I don't expect him to turn down the job. But there is no way if Brian Flores doesn't sue the league that Lovie Smith is the head coach of the Houston Texans. There's no way.
But
right?
Don't you think Lovie Kloss is a better coach than Lovie Smith was? I love the beard. I think it's going to work.
Lovie Kloss, I love it.
Lovie Smith has that seen some shit look on his face now. By the way, you go into here's my official statement on the Houston Texans. I've always viewed them more as a mega church than a football team, and I think that makes things make more sense. They still don't make sense, but they make more sense than if you view them as a football team. The problem I have is Lovie Smith walks into that job with that look on his face like he's been through it. What is he gonna look like next year? He's like the guy. I mean, I actually know some off the record stories there that would make you cringe. I mean, that place needs to get it together fast. And I don't know.
Are you saying Lovie Smith is not the guy to get it together for him?
I think Lovie Smith is a drive the car, but the car, the muffler's dragging against the highway.
Isn't that what they did? Isn't that what they did last year, though? That's what they did last year with Coley. Of just steady the ship.
Adam, it's not supposed to make sense. This is a faith and not. This is a by faith and not by sight operation that Houston Texans are going through here.
This is water into wine, is what you're telling me.
Exactly. I mean, if we're working in a rational universe here, David Culley's still the coach, and we just go through this again, right? And it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's insane.
I will express on the other coaches. Mike McDaniel was my choice by the end for the Raiders. Very disappointed that he went somewhere else, but I'm excited to watch how he coaches. And this is absolutely biased. First of all, the young nerd coach, totally in. That's my style. That's what I want. But also Mike McDaniel, college classmate of my brother, and also a guy that I met when he was in college. I was really, really hoping would be a head coach in the NFL, and he is. So I'm happy.
I was going to point out, Adam went to UNLV, but was considering Yale. His brother went to Yale, played basketball at Yale. If you've seen some of the podcasts Adam's done, you'll see his brother's Yale jersey. basketball jersey behind him. I knew, like, is that it though, or do you really like the pedigree of the guy?
I mean, obviously, I love the 49ers offense. I mean, when you watch it on film, when you watch it, they do I love what they do. How much of that is McDaniel? I think there's some influence for sure, and obviously he's been with Shanahan. Shanahan believes in him. Like he brings him everywhere, and he's his guy. So I don't know. I think with all these coaches, when they're young and you think you know what you're getting, you don't really know how they're going to be when they're in charge. He's also an odd dude. Like he was odd in college, and he's odd now. I love his personality. I love his press conferences are great. But how does that translate? I don't know. I don't think we know the answers, but I think it's exciting.
I haven't been able to figure it out. Did he play football at Yale?
Yeah, he was a wide receiver.
Okay, he did play at Yale.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is the future, right? It's where baseball's gone with all its executives and people are the numbers guys. Eric, this is it. This is the beginning. You know, Jason Garrett, I know, is a Princeton guy, but not really. Not once you're held up in high esteem by Jerry Jones. You lose all Ivy League swag that you had. You're clearly just become some kind of kiss ass or something. But this is the future, right? The egghead, you analytics guys, the math guys, he gets all that, and he's trained in football. You have to love this hire.
I do. He said some weird things about the run game and stuff, but I think that's just because that's his expertise. The Niners are kind of an interesting team in that they weren't particularly woke on fourth down or timeouts and stuff like that. But the guy can grow into that role. I think the Dolphins have been somewhat. This sounds stupid with the Florida stuff, but they have been somewhat forward thinking in terms of evidence based approaches to draft, free agency, and stuff like that. So yeah, I like it. I mean, look, I new ideas are great for football, right? Chip Kelly. Brought new. He wasn't exactly a math egghead, but he brought new ideas to the game of football, and that was entertaining, and that was fun, and that made us talk about new things. I think McDaniel will do that in Miami, and I think it'll be fun.
I think that it might be Chip Kelly. It might be complete boom or bust, one way or the other. But I think a lot of things are going to go his way. Anybody want to take a shot and explain to me, Dennis Allen, other than we're tanking?
Well, do you think how hard of an effort did Deanna make?
First of all, it's 10 seconds and you still haven't formulated even the beginning of where you're responding.
You're right. I'm like McVay at the end of the play clock.
Right, but I mean, I think you're never at a loss for words. You have to be at a loss for words. Seeing Dennis Allen is going to.
You told me I talk too much.
No, I'm telling you, you have the right response. This makes me feel good.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, man. I think it's there to keep the train on the tracks in an NFC South, which isn't going to be very good. I do think that they have some maneuverability. They can make it so it doesn't look so bad. But this is we're going to sign Jameis Winston for hardly anything. We're going to keep our defense okay, and we're going to win 9 games in this terrible division. Have you seen this division?
Yeah. I mean, it's looking rough. Adam, can you explain it?
The people around the Raiders were kind of surprised.
Was it because it was 8 and 26 or something?
Yeah. I didn't when Peyton made his announcement and people started saying like, oh, around the Raiders land, like, oh, DA might get the job, and I laughed. I was like, no, come on, that's not going to happen. But it did. I don't know. I can't. I don't with the Lovie Smith situation. Like you're like, okay, it's probably not inspired, but he's a coach. You get it. I don't get this one.
There's $71 million over the cap, and they didn't want to fly anybody in. That's my theory, right? They knew him. We don't have to pay for moving expenses. We just keep the band back together. I don't even think. I think with some of the bizarre things they've done, behind Sean Payton trading future picks to get back into drafts, I don't think they really get the draft. So why would they really get the coaching hiring part of it? To me, it's baffling. I mean, I do want to know what happened. Why not Jim Harbaugh to the Raiders? You were the first guy to talk about it. It became a hot thing, Adam. Why did that not materialize?
That's like the biggest reason I was excited about it. I was like, I've been talking about this forever. I hope it happens. I think Jim Harbaugh wanted the Raiders job more than the Raiders wanted Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. And I think early on, we remembered there was a fascination between Mark Davis and Harbaugh. But I think at some point along the way, and I don't know, like it sounds like what happened in Minnesota was Harbaugh came in there like, oh, I got this job. What do you want me to do? And they're like, no, you got to interview. And it might have been the same with the Raiders. There was no formal necessarily interview, but maybe that's what rubbed the wrong way. But I think listening to a lot of what Mark Davis has said, and I had a conversation with him a few days ago. Like, not that Josh McDaniels isn't a dynamic personality, but I think he had Gruden, and he's like, I'm getting another guy that's going to be the star in Harbaugh, and I don't know that I want that. And I think that was part of his thought process here. And I think he liked what Ziegler and McDaniels can do together, and I think he liked that pairing and that team and the way that they presented themselves as a team going forward. And I think he thought Harbaugh might be very similar to what he had in Gruden. I don't think he wanted that again.
Cam Dog, I'll take this. It's because of the positioning of Adams' camera, shooting low to high. It looks like cameras in the penalty box that always shoot the hockey players low to high. He's actually on Radio Row, right? Yeah, there it is. That's better. And for us big guys, Adam, you should always know camera high to low, right?
Well, I have a better.
It saves you 30 pounds in the view if you shoot high to low.
I have a better setup at home. I was looking for, like, all the Radio Row tables are the same. I didn't really know where to go.
Radio Row has been kind of a mess this year.
I would expect you to hold your laptop.
I'm going to hold it up
At arm's length the whole way.
Yeah,
I love it.
Hold it.
All right, rapid fire a couple of them real quick before we get out of here. Roger Goodell speaks this week. Anything come away? He touched on Germany. He touched on minority hiring. He touched on the fact that the owners could, in his mind, run an owner, which is of note with Ross. If he's found guilty of tanking with Daniel Snyder again being under fire. He seemed to put it out there. Like, to me, he sold out the owners into saying, police your own. I'm letting it be known you can take these guys out. And if you don't, it's on you. Like, that's what I took away from that. Did anybody else take that away from his comments about the owners being able to get rid of one of their own?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dereliction of duty. I mean, no one's going to hold these guys accountable if you're not going to. Like, years and years. I mean, the fact that Daniel Snyder still owns a team after everything he's done shows that there's no accountability here, right? So, yeah, to me, it was just kind of a gutless kind of discussion of, acknowledging the truth, but also not acknowledging the part he plays in making that truth better.
What about you?
And I mean, he said it several times. I was there out at SoFi at the presser, and he said several times, well, a lot of these are the same things we were talking about last year. Like, yeah, we know. We know what it is because nothing's changing and nothing's going to change. And, when you talk about, either, that stuff with Snyder and with Ross and those potential issues that they're facing, or the Flores suit and the continued lack of progress in terms of diversity hiring, it's a lot of the same things coming up over and over again, and nothing's changing. And it seems like it's such a slow process for that to happen. You did point out the one that jumped out at me, and I'll say my editor called me on the way home from that press conference and said, what is the biggest thing that came out of that? And I said, him just straight acknowledging, hey, if the owners want to get rid of an owner, they can do it. They'll vote him out. And we know that that's kind of the case, but like to just flat out say it, I thought was very interesting to just put it out there in the public and say, yeah, if they want to get rid of somebody, they can. And he was talking about Ross, but I think the message was out there for Snyder too.
Yeah, I think he was putting it out there for both. I mean, yeah. And I think one thing that's going to be interesting to watch with Goodell, this should be his last contract. And at $28 million a year, I assume he has enough money to retire. So at some point, shouldn't he be like a second-term president? I'm going to fire all my guns, and I'm going to try to actually leave this league in a better place. Like, he doesn't have to get re-election, right? So actually do the right thing for one time, for once. Maybe he did it with this one. I'm also intrigued by the Broncos sale. Byron Allen, I think there's a couple things. One, the NFL is pushing hard to try to correct the problem of only having one minority owner, Shad Khan. And Byron Allen, if you're old like me, you remember from the show Real People, comedian, has built this, I heard it called a media empire, and then I read Beyond the Weather Channel. I had never heard of anything else that he owns, but he's valued at roughly $450 million. And the owner of BET, Smith, I forget his first name, is another name that's out there, along with John Elway and Peyton Manning. It seems that they're going to try to show some diversity and approve. They want a black owner. Like, I'll be surprised if it's not either Byron Allen or Smith that own this team. Although I've heard Smith mentioned it a bunch of times in a lot of leagues. he's like the Eric Bieniemy. Like if you want to fill the Rooney Rule for ownership, you mentioned his name that you're looking at him. But the other thing I think is interesting is they may go to a point. When I look up Byron Allen, I don't see where he has enough money to buy a team. And I think there's two things that are going on here. If they go down that road, they're going to have to let him finance. You're supposed to be 30% liquid. And at one time, that number was 50%. And they backed that down to 30%. Like, I do think what happens with the Broncos is really important in the big picture of things for the NFL on a financial side and a diversity side. You agree, Eric?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that they have. I mean, this is one of the places where you can affect the decision making, like very, very, at once a person of color owns a team, you don't have to like pressure. There has to be less pressure, because there's going to be essentially a diversity in the group that's hiring, which is important because otherwise there's still that like sort of divide, right? And there's a lot of, for example, like, and this isn't perfect, but there's a lot of people of color who are coordinators in the NFL, right? But there's that next rung of people, who are not. They have to be trusted to sort of maintain that, and then above them is ownership and general managers, and they have to be trusted to maintain the head coaching diversity, and that hasn't happened, right? Like, but at the very top, if diversity is achieved eventually there, then I think a lot of the problems we have will go away.
Owners aren't just white. They're not just white, they're old and white.
Yeah.
And that generation they're not in the social circles, they're not associating with a whole lot of people that aren't like them. And as we get, further and further along, I think you're going to see more and more people that have more diversity in their social circles, but it's just not there. So without representation, you're not really going to see that. And it's not like I think people get really sensitive when you're like, "Oh, the NFL is racist because they're not doing these hirings." It's not even necessarily racism. It's like you're not. You don't really have experience in that world, and that's where things change. So I think backing away a little bit from it's just outright racism to just lack of understanding and lack of any kind of diversity around you, and kind of having the discussion that way, I think helps a lot so that people aren't feeling attacked necessarily. Because there's some racist owners, I think. But I think it's more just who are you comfortable with, and when they sit down and have a conversation with like a young black dude, they don't really have a whole lot of those conversations in their life, and I think it's different when they're having those interviews.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think the Broncos sale is a big one. Aaron Rodgers has been named the MVP. That's going to be an interesting one to see if he ends up changing teams. I don't know if a reigning MVP has ever changed teams in the NFL. I know it's happened in baseball, but I can't think of it ever happening in football. So that's going to be one to watch that we'll be watching over the weeks to come. Interesting, though. The Broncos sale is going to be a big one for sure. All right, that's going to do it for us. We got a lot going on in the NFL tonight. I want to thank Adam Hill for pinch hitting for Jeff Chadiha, who's covering the NFL awards for the NFL Network. Adam, great stuff. People can read your great work at Adam Hill, LVRJ, right? Las Vegas Review Journal, with the acronyms there for at
Sure.
Adam Hill, LVRJ. Also, if you're out in Vegas, you can hear him on ESPN Las Vegas. He covers everything. I'm sure you've got to go to the UFC fights or something here in 5 minutes as well, right?
No, they're in Houston. Can't go.
Okay, you got out of that. Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus. Check out his great work at pff.com. My name is Soren Petro. You can catch me at 810whb.com if you're not here in Kansas City to hear it over the airwaves. We appreciate everybody listening. Make sure you hit the subscribe, the likes. Those things do matter. They help us out a lot. We appreciate everybody listening. We'd love it if you'd hit that like, love, whatever it is, whatever the button is. If it's a positive, hit it. We'd appreciate it. We're back at it next week with our Red Gold Bowl podcast and Too Deep. So for Adam Hill, Eric Eager, I'm Soren Petro saying thanks for joining us here on Too Deep.
Subscribe to PFF.